Hello, my name is David Barlow. I'm from Oregon, and the fly that I'm going to tie today is the Lady Caroline. It's a traditional spay fly. It's tied on a fine wire hook. It's got a mallard wing, which is a little bit tricky to tie. Long flowing hackles, pretty traditional, like I say, dates from about 1830 and is from Scotland. So I'll take this sample out and we'll get going. The hook I'm using, you can use any number of blind eye hooks. Partridge makes several. The Bartlett CS10-2, I believe, is a blind eye, and the HE3. This is a custom-made hook. You really want to get a nice fine wire, long shanked. Okay, we're going to start off attaching the thread. I'm using black 12-aught thread and don't have my vise tight enough. We'll take 2 on that. Hopefully that'll hold it. Get to the back of the hook here. Most spay flies do not have tails, but this one actually does, and it's made from a flank feather of a golden pheasant. Strip the fibers away. Don't want this tail to be too heavy. Attach that to the top of the shank of the hook. 1 or 2 wraps. Come back forward, and you'll see me kind of bring the thread back and forth up and down this hook shank as I attach all the materials. I'm going to come back up a little ways, and I'm going to start attaching the tinsels. There are, depending on who you read on this pattern, anywhere from 3 or 4 different tinsels to be used. I'm going to use 3 today. I'm going to use metal tinsels. The Lugarton tinsels is what I'm using. This is gold flat. I'm also going to use a fine gold oval and a fine silver tinsel, which is also oval. Attach flat gold. Oval gold. And I'm attaching them at different areas on the shank. You basically don't want to end up having these all in one clump at the back. Right down to the base of the tail, and then I'm going to come back forward again. This is the fine oval silver. I put this on the underside. Okay, so that's 3 tinsels attached. Next, I'm going to attach some silk. This is olive silk, and I'm going to use this to dub the body. Cut about 10 or 12 inches of that just to make sure I have enough. Oops. Threads do tend to snap when you use these metal tinsels. So we'll get that attached again. Okay, so I have that attached. Now, one more thing to put in the back, and that's the hackle. Traditionally, this pattern calls for a heron, a gray heron. You can use a blue-eared pheasant. Either of those will work fine if you can get hold of heron. It is illegal in the United States to possess blue heron, but there are some others which are available. I'm going to tie this in by the butt of the feather, not the tip. I'm going to attach that and wind forward. I'll bring the thread up to the front of the hook. I'm going to start dubbing the body, and what I'm going to do here is take this silk, split it in two, maybe. There we go. And I'm going to take some dubbing. The original fly is called for what's called Berlin wool, which is fine stranded wool, and the mixture is 2 parts brown to 1 part olive. What I'm going to use here is a little bit of seal that has been pre-mixed in brown and olive, just as I mentioned. And you want these to be very fine. You don't want a heavily dubbed body. I'm going to start attaching this, just lightly twisting it onto the silk. I'll ping the other half of the silk alongside and twist the two together, and it traps the fur in between. I'm going to start winding on the body. I'm not stroking this fur back, I'm just kind of leaving it rough. Nice thing about dubbing on the silk is that even if the fur falls out, I still have nice color with the silk underneath. And as luck would have it, I think I may have put on the correct amount. Okay. I'm going to start tying that off, give it one wrap, unfurl that silk, give that a couple of wraps, and trim. Okay. And get this out of the way. I'm going to start wrapping these tinsels. Doesn't matter which one you start wrapping with. This is the fine oval gold. Most Atlantic salmon flies, and this is an Atlantic salmon fly, suggest that you make 5 wraps of tinsel. Spay flies are a little bit less picky, and I've heard as few as 3 wraps being appropriate. I think I have 5 right there, and I'm going to tie that off. Okay. I'm going to come forward with the gold flat, and I don't want these tinsels to be right up against each other. They need to be spaced out. Okay, and I'm going to tie that one off. And then finally the fine oval silver. tie that one off. Now I'm going to cut those. Fold them down with my thumbnail, just to make sure there's no sharp edges coming through. I'm going to come forward with the hackle in the same direction. If you had a fourth rib, what I would suggest is that you leave that fourth, wrap the hackle forward, and then counter wrap that last rib so it goes over the stem of the hackle. Not doing that here today. Okay. I'll keep folding that back. Make sure you don't trap any of these fibers. Okay, and I'll give that a couple of wraps at the throat here. Like that, and tie that off. I'm going to pull these hackles down below the hook shank, and I'm squeezing them against the stem, and I'll squeeze them so they sweep back. These are nice sleek flies, hackles sweeping back, the wings sweep back. So if you just pinch them up against the hook shank, it looks like that. Now, I'm going to put a throat on, and again it's a golden pheasant. It's a flank feather, a little bit longer than the tail. I'm going to give a couple of wraps of this at the throat, tying it in at the tip. I'm leaving both sides, I'm not stripping one side of it. I'll peel and prepare the feather so it looks like that. I'm going to take that tip, trim that, and just tie that in. I'm going to fold those fibers and give two or three wraps, maybe a little bit more. Got to be careful we don't run out of room at the head of this fly. We do want to make a very nice small head. That's kind of one of the characteristics of spay patterns. And tie that off. I'm going to start really using my thread wraps pretty efficiently here so I don't end up with a large head on this fly. And trim. And again, I'm going to pull those fibers. I'm just going to take the bodkin here and draw those fibers down and back. Basically, don't want fibers above the hook shank here so that they'll interfere with the wing. I want to keep them down below the hook shank if I can. Also, if there's any fibers from the dubbing, I'm just going to trim those right there. So now we're ready for the difficult part, which is the wing. The wing is a mallard, bronze mallard flank. You really want to get a good matching pair. This is the feather that I would consider to be the right-handed feather, and it will, for the way I'm going to dress this one today, this will be the far-sided wing. So the right-sided feather is the far-sided wing. It's accurate to do it either way, but that's the way I'm going to do that wing today. A few things to know about mallard is that on this feather there is a gray area just in here. I don't know if you can see that on the camera or not, but that's the area that you want to be using and tying in. The fibers in that particular part are very sticky. They'll hold together very well, and this if you tie up in this area up here, that the wing will tend to splay. So you really want to stay down in this gray area. The old books on these type of flies say you want wings with gray roots, and it's not an aesthetics issue. It is simply that the wing will hold together better if you have gray roots on it. So what I'm going to do is prepare this wing. I'm going to cut a strip out of it. My scissors are following the fiber of the feather. I'll take a snip. And if you're starting with this, if this is the first time you've tied a spay fly with mallard, I'd recommend that you start with thin strips and then kind of build up as your skills get better. I'm going to start with about a 1/4 inch wide, and we'll see how we get on with that. And so I'm going to cut that strip out of there, and that will be my far wing. I'll do the same now with the other feather. Okay, now I have a matching pair. You also want to put a little bit of what we call a hump into this feather. And what I mean by that is you hold the stem and just draw it out to the side very slightly, and then you get this hump. And I'll do that with the other wing as well. So again, there's that nice shape that we're looking for. This wing's length should come to about the back of the body, not the back, not go beyond the bend of the hook. You don't want a long wing. These flies have short wings. I'm just going to trim this feather a little bit just to make sure it's the same thickness. Okay. Now what I've got here is the left-hand feather, and that's going to be the near wing, and I'm going to put the two of them together. Make sure they're about the right length. It's very difficult to do it this way. Hold them together, and I'm going to fold them alongside each other. Maybe. There we go. Now you see how they all hold their set, and there's also a cup underneath. This wing does not sit directly on top of the fly. It veils the shoulders just a little bit. That's about the length I want, just about to the back of the body. Now, once I've got it set like that, I'm going to hold it with my left hand, because I'm a right-handed tyer, and I've got that set held underneath my hand. Not too much tension. Mallard's a pretty delicate feather. And now I'm starting to put the fibers either side of the hook shank, and I'm going to come over the top. Oh, just slipped out of place a little. Come over the top, just with a loose wrap. Push those fibers, and now come up with pressure, and down, and up, and down. Just give it a couple of insurance wraps, and I'm going to draw that feather back, and that should sit. So it looks not bad on my side, looks even better on that side. If I can tip the fly towards you just a bit, you should see that the feathers remain attached on the top. They don't split in a V. That's a different style of wing. So it should really look like, if you look at the top or look at it from the other side, from the front, it should look like a boat upside down. I'm not unhappy with this wing, so I'm going to leave it as it is. Give it a couple of insurance wraps and then clip off the butt ends of the feather. I recommend that you hold the wing when you're clipping. Just make sure that it stays in place. And with a blind eye, make sure that you don't cut the blind eye off the hook. Okay. Like I say, you do want to watch how many wraps you've used here. I've got about 6 wraps holding this wing, which is more than adequate. And in fact, what I'm going to do is unwrap a couple of those and come forward and start to form their head on this fly. Put a whip finish on that. And finish it off with a little bit of head cement. Fold those hackles back a little bit. And that's it. That's the Lady Caroline. Very traditional Scottish spey fly. Thank you very much.
I'm John Colburn from Salem, Oregon, and the fly I'm going to tie is the dark spruce hairwing streamer. It's used primarily for sea-run cutthroat, but also makes a fairly good steelhead fly and a good trout fly in small sizes. The hook that I'm using here is the Alec Jackson spey hook, and this happens to be a number 5 rather, hook, and I'm going to start laying in a bed of thread and start wrapping just over the very end of the return loop, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap it on with the rotary vise, which makes a good bed of thread and don't have to twist all of it on with my hand. And I'm going to stop about halfway down the shank and start my gold tinsel for the tag and the rib on the fly. Take a piece of tinsel about 1 foot long, and I strip off the gold from the thread core to give a good tie-in without a lot of bulk. Tie that in on the underside of the hook. And I want to get the stripped out part of the tinsel back to about halfway between the point and the barb of the hook, because that's where the tag is going to be. I'll make a couple of wraps up onto the tinsel and get rid of this little tag of thread. And now I'm going to wrap the tinsel on up to the point of the hook, and I'm just pushing the thread ahead of the tinsel as it goes up. And with the thread hanging down like this on the bobbin, I can tell when I come right over the point of the hook. About 2 more wraps here will do it. Now, a lot of the spruce patterns don't have that tag on there. It gives a little bit of flash and hopefully attracts the fish. And hold it with 2 wraps and just secure the rest of the tinsel in the material spring there. The tail is about 6 strands of peacock sword. And I want this to come back about a hook gap beyond the tail of or beyond the bend of the hook. So I'll tie that in and then wrap forward, just wrapping down those the ends of the tinsel, or of the tail. Yeah, clip off those ones that want to get wild on me. And I'm just wrapping over to get some of that fuzz laid down. And then here at the halfway up the shank, I'm going to tie in the floss. In this case, I'm using stretch nylon from Uni. It's a lot easier to work with than floss and makes every bit as good a body, and it's a lot sturdier. Tie that in with about 3 wraps, and then I'm going to wrap my thread up to the eye of the hook. And here again, I'm going to use the rotary feature of the vise to help me lay this body in. I'm going to start just laying the floss in toward the tail of the fly. Watch the point here. And when I get up right at the tag that I put on, then I'm going to start running the thread back, or the floss back to the tie-in point. That makes a double layer body, and it holds up better. Now I'm back at the tie-in point, and I'll unwrap the thread back to where it tied in. And then tie this in with about 3 turns of thread here. And clip off the ends. And I'm going to come in from the back side of the hook, lay the scissors right up against the hook, clip it off, and that way I don't get a lot of material there. And I'm going to put a 1/2 inch in here because I'm going to put the do the ribbing now. And again, I'll just run the thread out here to the bobbin rest and wrap the ribbing on about 4 or 5 turns over the floss, and just tie this off with a couple of wraps of thread. Let my bobbin get away from me here. Now the thorax, the forward part of the body, take about 4 or 5 strands of peacock herl from the eye feather. And I'm going to clip off about 3/4 of an inch at the top because it's pretty thin up there. And then I'm going to tie this in right there at the end of the floss, and then wrap my thread forward. Clip off those odd ends that are in there. Now I'm going to use the Alec Jackson method of making a peacock chenille here around. I'm going to take the strands of peacock herl and with the gold tinsel, and I'm going to twist it up, and you see the peacock is wrapping up around the tinsel, and start wrapping this on right forward. After I get about 3 wraps on there, then I can go ahead and twist the rest of it up. If you try twisting up the whole strand at one time, it's going to break off up at the tips. Wrap that on until it comes just over the return wire, the end of the return wire on the hook. And then tie that in on the bottom with about 4 turns of thread, and then clip off the peacock. Now the next thing is to, and here's the difference between this and other spruce flies. I'm using a squirrel tail, in this case a fox squirrel, and I'm going to take a pinch of that, about, maybe just a little bit thicker than a kitchen match. And get the little short pieces out. And I've got those ends pretty well even. You don't want them real even like a paintbrush. Got them fairly even. And I'm going to measure it here so that's just about to the end of the tail, or the peacock sword tail. Then clip that off and tie it in right ahead of the peacock thorax of the fly. Now, squirrel tail is very slippery, and when you try to tie it in, the only thing you're really tying in is the outer layer of the hair. The inner hair, I can take and pull all this hair out of here right now, even though I've got it tied in pretty tight. So we're going to use a little modern chemistry and put some super glue right there where I tied it in, and that will penetrate down into the hair and hold the hair together so that it won't strip out during casting or when somebody strokes the hair like that. And then wrap it down a little bit more, good tight wraps. Leave the thread up right where you began the tie-in. And then I'm going to select a dark furnace hackle feather. Strip off the fluff at the base of it, and what I want to do is get up in the part of the feather shaft that's the thin part of the feather shaft. It's a thicker part down here at the bottom, and I'll get up in the thin part here. Then stroke the fibers back so they stand out from the shaft. And this little tag end, I'm going to shorten that up a little bit, and then clip the hair or the fibers off either side, leaving about a 30-second or so of fibers on each side of the feather shaft, and that'll help to hold it in. And then I'm going to tie it in over the top of the feather with the shiny side, the good side of the feather up, and so it drops back over by its natural curve. And I'm going to wrap that in, and there's still a little bit of the clipped off part of the feather showing here, so it's going to make one wrap before the actual hackle starts in. And then put my thread out here at the eye of the hook, give me a little working room. And then I'm going to stroke the feather fibers back, doubling the hackle. We'll recover that in just a bit here. And I'm going to go back to what Dick Tilleur calls the wonders of modern chemistry and put a little super glue there just to hold that so it's not going to slip out on me again. Give that a little bit to set up and try again. This hen hackle that I'm using here is got a pretty thin shaft on it, so it does break out sometimes. Now I'm folding the feather back so that the fibers are going to lay back along the wing and along the body of the fly. This is a wet fly, it's not a dry fly, so you don't have to have them standing out. And it's soft hackle so that when it's in the water, why that hackle moves. Now I'm going to wrap about 3 wraps of the hackle stem on here, and then back my thread up and tie off the hackle. And I want the hackle stem up on top of the hook, so it's going to, when I cut it off, it's going to lay in the groove on the shaft of the hook. Then wrap on, make a head, fairly small head, but cover all that hackle stem that's in there and build it up a little bit against the hackle fibers themselves so it helps them lay back. That should do it. Then now on my flies, for my own personal use, I don't usually use head cement, but what I do is I put a double whip finish on. That way when the first whip finish comes undone, why, I've still got a usable fly. And then cut the thread, and I'm going to put head cement on this one. And this is another trick I learned from Alec Jackson, using in this case, a diabetic hypodermic needle. And you can put in a fraction of a drop of cement wherever you want it. That one got a little big on me. And that completes the fly as soon as that head dries. But the big advantage in the hair wing spruce is that the hair wing is a lot sturdier than the regular hackle wing that you normally find on a spruce fly. So it holds up a lot better. It fishes just as well, The hair does have movement in the water, and it is a good fly for steelhead, sea run cutthroat, and trout in streams and lakes. That's it.
Hello, my name's Les Johnson. I'm from Seattle, Washington. The fly we're going to be tying is called the JF Pink. It's a euphosid pattern used for fishing for Pacific salmon in salt water. It's a simple pattern that requires only a little bit of crystal flash, some Antron yarn, and a synthetic material called scudback. We use monofilament thread and a number 6 Mustad 34011 hook, which is stainless steel and which ties a fly exactly the body length that we need for a mature euphosid. We start by laying in a few strands, 3 or 4 strands of crystal flash, and then we wrap it forward, leaving the end sticking out both ways. We get that wrapped in, we go all the way to the back again, to the bend of the hook. What we've done now is we've laid in what we're going to need for the tail section of the fly and what we're going to need for the feelers on the front. The next step is to use some very fine vinyl wrap, rib, sometimes called V-rib. And this is the mini rib. It's the very smallest you can get. And you just tie a very small piece of it in along the top of the shank. So we wrap forward about 3/4 of the way, tie it in, and go to the back again where we have the other materials. Now we have our rib built in. The next thing we do is use a bit of this scudback, and this is a stretchy material, so you can tie it in nice and tightly and pull it up really snug. This forms the back of this euphosid. And this is you can take the corners and just cut them just a little bit to a point, and then tie it in right at the back of the fly. And then get it so it's even, right on top. Now once you've got it in there, it's in. Set all this material back and form a loop. This is called a dubbing loop. You see it in all the magazines and all the fly tying books. And we tie a dubbing loop, and then we wind this clear monofilament thread forward about 2/3 of the way and leave it. The dubbing we're going to use is called Antron, and it's a synthetic blend. I don't know what's all in it, but it's very sparkly and shiny, very durable. And it comes in a lot of nice pinks, light pinks, dark pinks. We're using a bright pink on this fly, which is essentially a little bit brighter than the color of the actual crustacean. But sometimes we find that the salmon, when they're looking at thousands and thousands of these little critters, they actually can see the bright ones better. And sometimes, even though it doesn't exactly match the color, it's a little bit brighter than the color, they go for it. Now, we don't want to make a neat loop here. We aren't looking for that. We want a real raggedy looking thing because we want the bottom of these to be the legs and the feelers and the gills on this critter. So we lay that in, and then we just spin it. You can spin it by hand. And then just wrap it forward. And we don't want a big body here. We want a little one. Because these guys are pretty sleek. We get about 3/4 of the way up, and we use it all. And now we just tie it off right there. And at this point, I clip that excess. I'm going to do this again, but I'm going to make another loop. Now we pull the scud back forward over the center and tie it off. And then I go in front of it a little bit. Now I don't know how well the vinyl ribbing shows, but then we come forward with the vinyl ribbing. The back part of a U faucet has a definite segmented look, and we want to recreate that. And then we tie that off in front of the rest of the scud back. Now this is as much of this as we're going to use. The next part of this fly is called the scarapace, the front part of a U faucet. So we don't need this. We just get that out of our way. We let all that stuff just hang down there. At this time, we can take the back a little bit and just clip those short, those little tail feelers. Just clip them off like that. They're out of our way. I leave them long when I put them in there because it's a little easier to deal with them. Now what we have here is a really nice strong fly. And at this time, I'm going to come forward and tie in a couple of pieces of amnesia, black amnesia monofilament. Now, this will be made into eyes. These little guys have a very distinctive dark eye. And you can buy ready-made eyes, and they work just fine, except that what happens is when the fish grab them real hard, you're feeding salmon, they'll oftentimes knock the eyes off of them. And they find it a little tougher to knock the eyes off, these mono eyes off. Okay, we make another loop. Go right back against our stopping point, and we make another loop. And I use a little bit of wax. It just makes it easier. Some guys go without it, but I usually are tying these things quick because I need a lot of them, and I need them fast, and I'm usually tying the night before I go on a trip when I should be planning it well ahead of time, but I don't. And this one's going to be a little bigger. The front part of a U faucet is a little bulkier. This is where they have a shoulder on them. And one thing that might be of interest to some of you guys is that oftentimes saltwater patterns for the Pacific Northwest, like this one, are tied with the eyes on the back, like a shrimp. Well, these are not shrimp. These little guys' eyes are on the front. They swim forward, and they don't swim very well. So what we're doing here is we want to make sure that we are tying this guy so that the eyes are going to be on the front. Now we just tie that off. It's real simple. This fly is almost ready to go right now. Now again, we pick up the scud back. This is the part we left hanging, and it comes over the top again. This forms the top of the scarapace on this fly. And we just tie that off really hard. And with this monofilament thread, you wind up with a very durable pattern. And I like them. Now, you'll see them tied sometimes out of the shops. They're tied really tighty because I think people like to buy a tidy fly. But the way you really want this fly to look is you want it to be scruffy and with movement, because these little guys, when they're moving, you know, their feelers wiggle and their legs wiggle, and they're just not looking all that tidy. And then we just clip these off fairly short. Now that I like about how that is right now, and if you want it a little shorter, you tie it there. Now we've got your basic U faucet pattern. Now I just take, and if you look, this is called a burning point. It's actually a medical tool. And I just hit the edges of that mono, form a nice little eye on each side. and that's an eye that won't come off. Now, about 3 half hitches. I whip finish this thing off here. And there's your fly, ready to go, ready to fish with.
Hi, my name is Lee Clark and I'm from St. Helens, Oregon. And today I'm going to show you how to tie the Clark stonefly. It's a very popular pattern for the Pacific Northwest for the stonefly hatch on the Deschutes, Metolius, wherever the stonefly hatch is. It's also a great pattern to imitate large caddis patterns. Grasshopper patterns. It's what I would call a generic pattern, so it will work in many different situations. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tie it. It's a very simple fly to tie. I use a Tiemco 5212 hook. First thing I'll do is put a base of thread on it. Next, gold tinsel. Run the thread up to where you're going to tie it off. Leave it approximately 1/16 of an inch in back of the eye of the hook and wrap the gold tinsel forward. Every part of this fly has some significant importance to catching the fish. Gold tinsel, of course, adds a little bit of sparkle and flash, which will definitely attract the fish. Seal that off. Run the thread back to where you're going to tie in the next part, which will be the poly yarn. This is called Clark's tying yarn. You can buy it at most shops in this area. And what I'm doing is I've got 2 strands of orange, and generally what I do is I will mix a rust and gold. I will mix. I will use straight rust. I can use a light brown and gold mix. But generally, general rule is I'll go ahead and I'll comb 2 together, and then I'll take just a pinch out of the material, and that's about the right proportion. You don't want to overdo it on the amount of yarn. So what I'm going to do is this yarn is, it's just a couple pulls or pushes with the comb does open the fiber very easily. Most of the time I'll use the leg as a base to work from, but since I want you to see everything, well, I decided to do it blind. Now she's all ready to go. Now I said I'd take a pinch out, so I'll take just a portion out. Lay it down there on the table. This extra stuff, what I've learned to do with it, is chop it up into short pieces and actually dub it right on the hook. So that's another technique or a different use of the poly yarn. I'll be writing a book and having it out within the next couple of years, and it's going to have all kinds of neat techniques with this yarn. So when you get tired of looking at this tape and you want something new to look at, well, you can go ahead and get the book and enjoy it. What I'm going to do now is, you notice it has a point at the very top, so this will be the butt end of the fly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just trim that off, and I hold the scissors at an angle so it's not, see, generally most people will go ahead and chop it right off, and that doesn't look natural. We want the butt end of that insect or that fly to look more natural, so we'll just go ahead and I'll rotate it between my fingers here into that kind of a nice rounded, see how that looks a little bit better, and we'll go ahead and we'll tie this on. What I'll do is I'll lay it right on the very top of the hook and extend it about 1/4 inch over the bend of the hook. Hold on and wrap approximately 11 wraps. Try to get those wraps in the same spot. And then I'll grab the yarn on both ends, and I want to make sure that yarn is directly on top of the shaft of the hook, because that's very important on balance. Trim it. I usually pull it back, and when I cut, it will give me a nice tapered head. Okay, we'll go ahead and get ready to go for the next part. Take it right back to where you're going to put in the wing. And there I use a natural deer hair wing. I want it to be flat. And here I think sparse is a good word. You don't want to really have too much bulk with the wing. This is an insect, represents an insect that, what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of pulling out the extra stuff. This represents an insect that has fallen off a bush and into the river and trying to make it to shore. So what we'll do is we'll lay the hair on the very top again, very important to get it straight, and then extend it out over 1/4 inch. Hold it secure and a loose wrap, and then just bring it straight down, put tension down, and I'm not putting too much pressure on that. You don't want to flare it. So now I'm starting to put a little bit more pressure on it, working toward the eye of the hook. Now usually, I got lucky on this one, but usually I have to trim off the ends of the deer hair, but not so. Everything worked out just almost perfect on this one. So we're just going to get it all ready to go and covered so that we can put the hackle on. There you are right there. Now sometimes you will have a flare that will occur, and all you do there is a couple wraps of the hackle, which will be next, will generally lay it down. The hackle I used is just a cheaper saddle hackle, nice soft hackle. Basically, you don't need real expensive stiff hackles for this, and we'll go ahead and we'll tie that in. And another thing I do, and maybe most of you, you that are viewing this probably know that all you need to do is trim each side like that, and now you've got something to have the thread. See, that won't, it's like a comb. Now that hackle, well, shouldn't have come out. little bit harder. Yeah, that's better. That'll hold the hackle and it won't come off while you're fishing. We'll wrap that on, and generally what I like to do is put a wrap or two over the, real light over the deer hair wing, and that will keep it down fairly flat. Now this insect has a very large head, so what we're going to do is we're going to build up the thread, make a little bit larger head, trim off some of the deer hair, or not deer hair, but hackle. A whip finish. And there you have it, a finished Clark stonefly. Now, it's very important that this fly, when it hits the water, that was the reason for creating this. I wanted a fly pattern that would hit the water right every time, right on its feet. I've had too many fish turn away because the fly just flipped over on its side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it from the vise, and I'm going to trim the bottom of it, and then I'm going to throw it up, and I'm going to hit that spot right there. And hopefully it's going to land on its feet. And if it lands on its feet on the table, it's going to land right on the water, okay? So I'm going to pull it, turn it over, and then I use the gold tinsel as kind of a target. Make one little clip. It's just called just a V cut, basically. Now I'm going to drop it. There it is, right there. I want to take just the last few minutes to show you variations of the Clark stonefly. Number 2 right here is the one that I just finished for you. That's the regular Clark stonefly. But you notice this one's got a pink wing on it, and that's for people that can't see very well. It's parachute style. It's tied the same way, same materials, but it's parachute style, and it has a nice bright spot so that you can see it out in the current better. Number 3 is what I call a fluttering stone. It's the same materials but different proportions. The wing is flared, and I use 2 hackles, and there is more hackles showing. So this is a very high floating pattern. The next pattern, number 4, is a flat wing pattern, and it's the same materials, but the wing is tied and placed over the top of the hackle. And then I've dubbed some of the same yarn material and then added a material called a soft body to it, and then pinched it and gave a nice flat head approach. And I don't know if you can see that, get the illusion, but it's actually flat like the natural. The last one is it's another parachute pattern, and if you don't like to use bright pink, you can use just straight orange, and I believe you could see that out on the water also. I haven't tried that yet, but for those of you that don't like pink and stay with the regular colors, orange would do just fine. But all of these, I guarantee you, will catch fish. And it's been a pleasure for me to present this. I was on the very first videotape many years ago, and I've learned so much more of what you can do with poly yarn. So thanks again.
Hi, my name is Christian Billard, and I'll be tying an X flies today using two bodies, a technique with an extended body. I'll show you pretty much how to put the hook, how to put the two body on the hook. And this is actually a finished fly, but I'll show you here. I took a rusty two body, and I'll put it on a size 12 hook. Just have to do this. Just slash it, point it in the hook. Let me take this fly off. Okay, so your body is pretty much finished. You'll have to do the wings, the antenna, legs, and all that. So I'll show you how to do this. Pretty easy. Now you could put a little dot of super glue on the hook to keep the body from spinning around, but if you have a good solid thread, like a 6/0 or something, that will do it. There we go. Okay. Now I'm going to put the caddis wing. It's just a partridge wing. You can do it with any color wings, but I'm using this kind of a color. It looks like a October caddis wing from the Mackenzie, I guess. Here we go. You fold it like that. And you just tie it on the two body, going backwards. There. Okay. Now I'll be taking some pheasant here, and you need to take about 6 to 8 strands, depending on the size of the hook. Right. There we go. You cut the excess. Now you want to measure, see how long of an antenna you want. So you just put it there, and that's pretty much looks like a caddis here. So you take it backwards, and you tie it on. Cut the excess about right behind the eye, hook eye, the eye of the hook. Right, like that. Okay, it'll just keep the antenna that way. And now we're going to take care of the leg part. So I'm going to use a tool, it's called the dovette tool, just a spinning tool. We're going to spin the deer hair around to make it a nice, bulky, buggy fly. They'll float great on the water. All right, I'm using some, you can do legs with any color deer hair, but I'm using some dark brown. Okay, clean up the excess fuzz here. I'll probably take a little, tiny bit more. There we go. Okay, so make a loop. You can do that with any kind of tool, a spinning tool, so this one it's pretty easy to spin with. Okay. There we go. Now what you got to do is just spin a lot. You can form this core of deer hair that will make it really buoyant, nice and buggy. So you just spin it around like so. Okay, put the legs backwards. And what you want to do is just flatten out the legs, the deer hair, and just cut it flat on top. Okay, now you take all your the pheasant tail you had in the back here, and you fold it over, forming the abdomen of the fly. Here we go. You want to separate them in half. Take the antenna up and just kind of around the eye of the hook, just go about 8 or 10 rounds and just put them back up. Now what we want to do is just keep only 2 antennas because of the caddisfly only have 2 antennas, so you'll just have to make sure you don't cut all the pheasant tails here. Just keep 2 nice 2 long ones. Here we go. Okay, now what you want to do is just whip finish. Now we got to work on the on the bottom of the fly, so I'll keep it on the vise. You can see it like that. Here we go. And shave the bottom a little bit, so we'll have a nice riding low caddisfly. This pattern works really good in lakes for big trouts, and also for on heavy waters where there's some big browns. There we go. It looks like nice and buggy. Now I'll show you take it in my hand, and you want to cut down the wings, just the shape of the caddisfly. There we go. Put it back on the vise, put some cement, and then you get a caddisfly that pretty much works. Late in the evening you can drag it. It's a really good dragonfly because of the deer hair and the tube body helps float the whole thing, and it gets this really buggy look in the water. Fish loves it. There we go.
My name is Gerald M. James, Grants Pass, Oregon. The fly I'm going to tie today is the Golden Demon, Jerry's Golden Demon Steelhead fly. It's a takeoff of the Golden Demon that Zane Grey brought to the Rogue River in 1917. But I've changed it a little bit, and I've increased the fishing ability about 50%. So I'm tying on an Alec Jackson gold spay fly hook, a size number 3. And the first thing I put on is my tinsel, Mylar tinsel flat for the tag and the thread breaks, and then you try to start over. We'll see if we can do a little better this time. Hope I haven't got a bad spool of thread here. Just cover my thread there. Try that flat tinsel again. And I make a little bit of an angle in my tag as I'm tying it on, so when it tapers near the top end of the hook, it tapers right into the gold braided mylar that we'll use for the body. And you can reason if I'm tying a display fly, I don't have to tie quite as much wax nylon thread and the clear head cement as I'm tying through it. It just takes extra time, so I'll deplete the head cement and just go ahead and tie it. But if you want a durable fly, the head cement's the way to go. So now I've tied the tippet, or tag rather, excuse me, tag, and I used my pliers to even out the tag a little bit. I was Polly Rossborough's sole fly tyer for the last 15 years that he was living, and so I've learned to use his pliers quite a bit in tightening down bodies and securing them a little better and making them a little smoother. Okay, I'm ready for the tail now. I got the tag finished. I take a small amount of yellow neck hackle, which is a little bit more yellow, a brighter hot yellow than Zane Grey would have brought from New Zealand. And in doing that, by using hot colors through the fly, I've increased the catching ability by 50% at least, and it is my favorite fly. And for the veiling material, I use dyed hot golden pheasant tippet, and there's just something about the combination that the fish seem to love. And in about 1966 or 67, I adopted the hot orange hackle to the fly, and that really seemed to help too, to entice the fish to bite, because they really do. And my favorite time to use a Golden Demon, this Jerry's Golden Demon, is an hour after sunup and the last hour before sunset. And now I'm ready for the gold diamond braid mylar, and the reason I switched over from just the flat or oval gold is that you get a bad break in that oval gold, and it just takes away from the fly. And the added strength of this braid, diamond braid, really enhances the fly, because it allows you to tie a fly that's just like tying with a steel cable. Many strands make a really stronger line to tie with, and it works well with this Golden Demon. And when it's in the water, it refractures the light, and you get just all kinds of sparkly hues in the water from the gold. Now, I learned from Polly that in using these pliers, and I'm one of the few that I see that does use them, it really makes the body, you can change the angle of the body as far as the refractions in the water. So you can get an idea there how it looks. And if I want just a little more taper on the back, I just use my pliers. And you can shape the body pretty good, but I don't need that necessarily to shape it. Now I'm ready for my saddle. I've already laid out 2 two hot orange saddle hackles here, and the saddle hackle that I use I've been getting from Bob Worden at Hairline Dubbing, and I really like his hackles. Well, they're good quality, the hackles to begin with, but his colors are just very unique and bright, best I've seen around. And so I'm ready to tie in the hot orange saddle here. And I grab that with my hackle pliers. And then a trick that John Shuey perfected, I think, because he's the first one I heard of it from. And I've been at this game a while. I've been tying flies from Grants Pass for 46 years and tied 38 years commercially. Tying the hackle in. Makes a very durable fly using the components that I have over the old originals because, well, they just haven't made them as strong, or they didn't make them as strong years ago as they do now. But this is one of my favorite patterns, and I really enjoy tying it. I use it myself quite a lot, and that's what inspires me to tie it more, because I guess if you use a fly more, you're going to catch more on the one you use. So, and then I'm ready for the wing, and I was the first one, I think, as far as I know, at least in tying this golden demon. I used both phases of the Russian squirrel, both the summer and winter, and I tie in the real light cinnamon colored wing first, and you get it down to where you can add some to it and not make it look too bulky. So I use the light cinnamon color in the back, and I try to make my wing the same length as the end of the veiling material, the orange with the black tip, golden pheasant. Now when I'm tying this, I always put clear head cement in the end of the wing, and now that's the light phase. Now I'm ready for the dark phase. I might say that fly tying's my whole life. I was Oregon's 1993 Fly Tyer of the Year, and I guess you just got to tie a lot of flies to get there. I try to get any odds and ends hairs out of the tail for the wing, and you don't have to do that so much for fishing, but presentation flies that you hang on the wall, you like to get it to look as good as you can. Then you tie in the head, and each fly tyer has his own particular style of tying in the head, and some are very, very small, and some are tapered heads. And I like a head that's, well, you can see the heads there because a fly has a head, as John Shuey says, and I agree with that. Now, it's strictly an optional thing whether or not you want to put jungle cock eyes on the side of each fly. I personally use jungle cock eyes to tie with, and I don't know, to me they catch fish a little better, and since they're grown domestically now, I don't have any bad thoughts about using them. I do the whip finish, and in this particular case, being a little short of time, I won't bother to put in the eyes, because if I do, I would have had those selected already, and they would have been ready to go. And there's Jerry's golden demon steelhead fly, and it seems to work very well. And any given year, I'll probably catch 10 to 15 steelhead on it, but I'm not that much of a fisherman. In that I spend as much time as a lot of the guys do, and I think I guess for sure I'm a better fly tyer than I am a fly fisherman, and but I do enjoy the fly tying a lot. Yeah, but I enjoy this fly particularly because of the hot orange, hot yellow, just the hot colors that have come into play with this pattern that I've adapted. And on the Rogue River, it's just a hot fly early in the morning, late in the afternoon. And so that pretty well says it for this fly. And I love to tie with the Alec Jackson Spay Fly hook. That's my favorite.
Hi, I'm Linda Foote. I'm from Redmond, Oregon, and I'll be tying the Cascade Special. It's a Great Lake fly. It imitates a damselfly or a bloodworm. To start off, I debarb the hook. The hook is a 200R. And then I place a red bead on for the head. Get it in the vise. And I use a burnt orange 14-knot thread. Wrap the full shank of the hook with thread. Trim it. And then we'll do a marabou tail. And again, I use burnt orange. And this is a nice dark burnt orange. And I just do about 15 strands of the marabou. This is kind of a sparse tail. And I tie it in a little bit longer than the hook shank. Trim off any extraneous ends. Tie it in. And I wrap the thread forward, tying in the marabou to thicken up the body a little. Bring the thread back to the tie-in point of the marabou. Trim the excess off the front. And then I'll use angel hair for some flash in the tail. Just a few strands. And this is copper-colored angel hair for this fly. Tie it in so it goes on both sides. Then we'll tie in some burnt orange hackle. This is also grizzly, and I actually do it about the size of the hook gap or a little bit longer. And you palmer it in. Then we do the body material, which is a short shuck crystal chenille. And this again is burnt orange. And this stuff is what they call short shuck, so the fibers aren't very long. Makes a nice buggy looking body. Wrap this forward, pulling back the fibers so it builds a nice thicker body. And I wrap them as tight as I can together to give it some fullness and lots of the fibers. Tie that off. And bring the hackle forward. with about 5 or 6 wraps. Then a couple extras up front. Tie that off. Pull all the hackle back as best you can. A few thread wraps, make sure you got it in good, and whip finish. Trim the hackle. A few miscellaneous fibers. And do another whip finish, about 3 or 4 wraps. Tie that off. Trim the thread. And you have a Cascade Special.
My name is Leroy Cook, and I'm going to tie the Reckless River Boy. This is a nymph pattern. It's a real buggy pattern. So we'll put a hook into the vise. It's a quick pattern to tie. The way you tie this is you directly dub right onto the wire. It's a very fast fly. It's got a real buggy appearance to it. Now, one of the things I like to use is squirrel for legs and nymphs, for the tails and legs. This is red fox squirrel. We'll make some tails with it real quick. Now we're ready to make the body. I use 28 gauge wire. It's very easy to use and directly dub onto. It's strong, it won't break. Tying this pattern, of course, you can do your own variations, but what I want to show here is how to make a very buggy body real quick. We'll get rid of the thread, get it out of the way. And we have a piece of wire attached to the hook. It's just a little bit too long. This is ski wax. It's sticky ski wax. What I'll do is I'll just rub it on the wire. And then we'll take some dubbing and put right onto the wire. Just as I use Angora goat and I mix it with some binder with squirrel or hare's ear. Notice I'm just sticking it directly to the wire where the ski wax is. Okay? Now I'm going to change colors. I'll make the thorax a little darker. Bring that up. Now we're ready to make the body. Take the wire, a single strip of wire, and I'll twist it. Okay? The long fibers will twist around the wire, and as you can see, this is a very fast, easy way to dub a buggy nymph. Come right on up, make the thorax a little thicker. Okay. Sometimes I find out I actually make them too buggy. Anyway, this is about where we are. I'm going to half hitch the wire. Then I'm going to put my thread back on. Get rid of the tag of the wire. Now we'll put the thread back on. We'll make the wing case. You can put legs up here on the front if you want. Do your own thing. Okay. Piece of treated turkey. You can treat it with lots of different ways. I generally treat mine with fingernail polish. This will be a stonefly nymph. The fly is called the Reckless River Boy. So now we have a wing case. We'll tie it off. Cut the front off. Thoraxes on nymphs go back about almost halfway. And there we have a Reckless River Boy. I hope you try it, and I hope you fish with it.
Good afternoon. My name is Vern Jeremica. I'm from the state of Washington. I live in Issaquah. Been fly fishing for steelhead for about 35 years. And fly I'm going to tie for you today and talk a little bit about is a fly design that's called the flat wing caddis. And actually, the idea behind a flat wing is not really new. This style of pattern was tied back in the 18th century in England. And basically what it is it's an imitation of an October caddis pattern. Instead of having the tenting where you have a pair of feathers going back, I've just basically taken one single feather, turned it sideways, similar to what you would do on a stonefly, and placed it on the hook as a wing. Now, what's nice about this is it skates like a regular steelhead pattern, and you got to think and remember what the steelhead's looking at when he or she's coming after the fly. I mean, they're going to be looking at the bottom of the fly, and whether it's tented or it's flat wing, like in this case, I don't think they could really tell the difference. So anyway, it's been a really dynamite pattern for me on the steelhead on the Grand Ronde, on the Kalama and the Snoqualmie in Washington, and also for sea run cutthroats. I've done very well with it also. And I tie it on a size about 6 to about a size 8. On occasionally I'll use a size 10. Now, the hooks that I'm using, I like the partridge salmon steelhead hook, which is also called a bomber hook, and this is basically what the hook looks like. It's a loop-eyed hook. I also like the Tiemco fly hook, and this is a 200R, and this is a little bit light wire, but a very strong hook, and also the Alec Jackson spay hook in a light wire. That's also been very good for me, and about a 7 or in the 9s when he had them. So anyway, this has been the hooks that I'm going to use. I'm going to tie the one today on the Tiemco hook, the 200R. So I'll place it in the vise. A little bit before we begin, some of the preparation that takes place and some of the selection of the materials that I'm going to use. For body material, I have two different things that I like to use. One is some kind of a fur dubbing for the body, and in this case, kind of a rust orange. This here is seal's fur. You could use CLX. You could use rabbit fur. There's numerous things that you could use. Another thing that I just started using the last couple of years, and that's foam. And it's real quick, it's easy, the fly floats very well, and you can get this in almost any fly shop. If you are looking for this to tie this body, get the thinnest, this is 2 mil, the thinnest you can get, and you can also get it pre-cut, you can cut it with the scissors. You can also use one of those wheel scissors that they use for cutting fabric. It works very nice on this material. Okay, as far as the type of deer hair, just standard muley, blacktail hair, hollow. Sometimes I'll put in the throat and I'll use moose mane, maybe about 15, 16 fibers. On this one today, I'm not going to do that. Sometimes I'll change the head of the pattern, and like for example in this one, I tied it with deer hair, but then I used antelope for the head, just for a different look. Now, as far as the wing, there's a lot of ways you could make this wing. One way you can do it, you can take a wing burner and you can burn out a basic stonefly single wing to put on the back. And the way that I've been doing it is sometimes I use just a basic whole feather and without any preparation whatsoever. And these come off of the Coturnix quail. And the Coturnix quail, there's a male and a female. And I'm not sure if this is different species or what, but I have a dark and a light cast Coturnix quail, and this is the light cast. And if you're looking for that kind of feather for the wing, you can get them right off the tail here, and you can just pluck one of those out and put them on. It works very, very well. So this is the light cast, or the dark cast, excuse me, and this here is the light cast. Now, what I initially started using for the wing was pheasant tail, or pheasant body. And the feather that I used is a feather called the, some people call it the church window feather. And when you look on the pheasant here, you'll see these feathers along just on the back and on the wing root. And as you get towards the very back of the wing root, you can pull them out. And as you can see, this one's not a real good quality one because it's twisted. You want to get one that's fairly flat, but you can see like a little church window there. So this is one of the feathers I normally use. And when I use those, I will normally put a coating of epoxy 1000. You could get this in Rite Aid, Payless, any women's store where they sell fingernail polish. Also, you can use Flex Seal or Dave's Flex-Cement. All those work fairly well. Now, what you do is you take a feather like this, and get me a good one here. I like them that are got a little bit of curve because that's going to sit on the hook a little bit better. And I've got this tool here. It's a cutting tool, and a Faust fly shop in Montana has this tool, but you can get them almost anywhere. And basically, it's a tool that just cuts the feather out. Now, so you could use a wing burner. You can also use a tool. So I'm not sure if you can see this here. Are you able to see that, the cutting of this? Okay, I'm going to try and hold it up here, show you what you do. You lay the feather on the, basically what it is an eraser, and I line it up so that I'm kind of centered on the stem, and I push down. I'm going to come off the video for a moment, pull back, and you basically cut the feather. Okay, so we've got all of our materials. We've talked about all the materials that we're going to use for tying this fly. And we're ready to begin. So one thing I do, just to help prevent a little slippage, I take and just put a little bit of wax on the hook like so, just so that the thread won't spin so much around it. Nothing worse than having a body turn on you or the deer hair turn on you with the wing when you're tying this on. That seems to help a little bit. So I'm just going to go to the very base or back end of the hook, abeam the point. I'm going to pick out a little bit of deer hair for tail. Now, you know, caddis don't really have a tail, but you'll see a lot of caddis patterns with tails on them. And maybe just helps the fly ride up a little bit. I don't know, but sometimes I put tails on them, sometimes I don't. And one of the advantages, which I'm going to show you in putting this tail on here, what I'm going to do is just have it so it's just slightly past the bend of the hook. And I'm going to measure it. And I'm going to measure it up to just about maybe 80% of the hook. And I'm going to pre-cut, holding it in that position, and pre-cut the hair. Hold it basically in the same position. Come back forward. I've got a nice base of thread on there. And then I'm going to start at the very tip and tie in with a real loose, just barely closing down on it. Then I'll tighten up. I'm going to hold the deer hair, all of it above so it doesn't roll around in the shank. And I'm going to come back and I'm spacing my thread so that I'm not tying it real tight. And what that does is all that hollow hair in there is going to help float the fly a little bit with the fur that's on there. I'm not going to try and close off all that air that's in there. So there's still some air trapped in that hollow fiber in the deer hair. Then I'm going to pick off some seal's fur. Say you could use anything you want. I really like the color, this rust orange color. Going to roll it in my hand here and just make a little dubbing loop here, or dubbing knurl. Put a little bit of wax on the thread. And just make myself a doubling loop here. Get it all in between there. Get my shepherd's hook. And twist it. And if you hold it at the very top here, if you hold the fur there, it'll help anchor it so that it twists around. Otherwise, sometimes it'll just follow it around and you have to do more twist than you want. You can also help a little bit by rolling it with your fingers. Get it how you want it. I've got it kind of tapered towards the back and a little fatter in the middle, and I can pluck it out as needed. And we'll just start winding this on. And as I wind forward, I'm going to comb it back a little bit as I wind each wrap of fur. Okay, and I'll pick out some of that. It's a little thicker than I would like it, so I'll just pick it out and put that in the other pile because seal's fur is fairly expensive and try to conserve it as much as possible. Okay. Now, as I come up here to tie the wing on, what I want to make sure that I don't do is that I don't tie, you've got a hump in the body and then you have very little thread. And if you tie it down there real hard, what's going to happen, it's going to pop up. Tell you what, I don't like that wing. I'm going to go ahead and use another wing here. Excuse me for just a minute. That wing didn't look very good. I'll try another wing here.